Do you remember the friends you had 40 years ago? The ones you laughed with, confided in, and thought would always be there? But time moves forward, doesn't it? People drift, priorities shift, and one day you find yourself looking back, wondering where everyone went. In that quiet realization, a question lingers. Does happiness after 70 still depend on having a wide circle of friends? Or is there another way? A way that leads not to loneliness, but to freedom, clarity, and a deeper kind of peace. For years, we've been told that staying social is the key to a meaningful life, that friendships define our happiness. But as time passes, the invitations slow, the phone stays silent, and suddenly the world grows quieter. At first, that silence may feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. But what if it isn't something to fear? What if it's an invitation? An invitation to finally live for yourself, not for the expectations of others, not for the company you think you need, but for the joy of simply being. Imagine waking up each morning with complete freedom. No obligations, no expectations, just the quiet thrill of choosing exactly how to spend your day. A sunrise with coffee, a walk under golden autumn trees, a long-forgotten passion reignited. This isn't loneliness. This is liberation. Today, we'll uncover 7 reasons why independence after 70 isn't just an option, it's the key to a richer, more meaningful life. And as you listen, you may just realize something powerful. Happiness has never depended on how many people surround you, but on how deeply you embrace the life that is yours to live. If you believe that wisdom deepens with time, that life after 70 is meant to be lived on your own terms, then you're in the right place. Join our Elderly Wisdom Story community, subscribe now, and let's walk this journey together. Because the best years of your life, they're not behind you. They're waiting ahead. For so many years, life was shaped by expectations, showing up, giving your best, caring for others before yourself. It was a rhythm you knew well, a role you played without question. But now something has changed. The world no longer demands the same things from you. The obligations that once defined your days have faded, and in their place, something unfamiliar yet profoundly powerful remains: freedom. At first, it may feel unsettling, this sudden stillness, this newfound space in your life. For decades, your time was never truly your own. It belonged to your family, your career, your responsibilities. You planned around others, adjusted to their schedules, gave your energy without hesitation. But what if, instead of searching for what's been lost, you embraced what's been gained? What if, instead of fearing the quiet, you stepped fully into the beauty of living on your own terms? Mary, 72, spent her entire life as a school principal, guiding students, mentoring teachers, dedicating herself to the success of others. Her days were filled with early mornings, endless meetings, and the constant pull of responsibility. When she retired, she felt adrift, unsure of who she was without the structure that had defined her. But then something shifted. One morning, she woke up and realized, for the first time in decades, there was no one to answer to but herself. She could linger over her coffee, take a walk simply because the sun felt warm on her skin, or start the novel she had always dreamed of writing. No more rushing. No more explaining. Just the simple, quiet joy of living life exactly as she chooses. And that is the beauty of this stage of life. You no longer have to justify your choices. There is no need to fit into anyone's expectations but your own. Whether you want to travel, take up painting, or spend an entire afternoon in the garden, the only permission you need is your own. Independence is not about isolation, it is about reclaiming your time, your energy, your joy. There is something deeply freeing about realizing you are no longer bound by the schedules of others. You don't have to wait for someone to be available, to adjust your plans to fit someone else's needs, or to explain why you would rather spend the afternoon in quiet solitude than at a crowded gathering. Doing things alone isn't lonely, it's liberating. Because now, for the first time in a long time, you get to choose exactly how you spend your time. And that choice? It's yours and yours alone. Freedom isn't just about how you spend your time, it's also about who you allow into your life. Because what good is independence if you're still weighed down by relationships that no longer serve you? After years of giving, of adjusting, of making sure everyone else was happy, this is your time to choose what truly brings you peace. And sometimes that means letting go. George, 75, spent his whole life being the kind of friend people could rely on. He made the phone calls. He planned the meetups. He was always the first to check in, to reach out, to keep the connections alive. But one day he noticed something. If he didn't call first, no one else did. If he didn't send the invitation, no plans were made. It was a hard truth to swallow, the realization that some friendships had been built not on mutual care, but on habit. So he stopped. He put down the weight he had been carrying for years. And at first, the silence felt strange. But then something remarkable happened. The weight lifted. The exhaustion faded. The pressure to keep one-sided friendships alive disappeared. And for the first time in a long time, George felt free. There's a quiet power in recognizing that not every relationship is meant to last forever. Letting go isn't an act of bitterness, it's an act of self-respect. It's choosing peace over obligation. It's realizing that you are under no obligation to hold on to people who wouldn't hold on to you. And that truth is both painful and liberating. Maybe you felt it too. That nagging sense of exhaustion after a conversation that feels more like a duty than a joy. The hesitation before answering a call you don't really want to take. The realization that some people only reach out when they need something. And yet we hold on out of habit, out of guilt, out of the fear that letting go means being alone. But what if it doesn't? What if, instead, it opens the door to something lighter, something clearer, something beautifully simple? This is the power of an emotional detox. Just as the body thrives when freed from toxins, the soul flourishes when it is no longer burdened by relationships that drain more than they give. And the most beautiful part? When you clear that space, you make room for the relationships that truly matter, the ones that feel effortless, reciprocal, and real. So if you've ever felt exhausted by the friendships you're holding onto, ask yourself, are they holding onto you? And if the answer is no, maybe it's time to release them. Not with resentment, not with regret, but with the quiet understanding that not all friendships are meant to last a lifetime, and that's perfectly okay. When you finally release the weight of friendships that no longer serve you, something unexpected happens. The relief is immediate, the exhaustion fades, the pressure lifts, and for the first time in years, you feel a quiet sense of peace. But then, in the stillness that follows, another feeling arises. What now? For so long, your days may have been shaped by others. Conversations filled the empty spaces. Plans dictated how you spent your time. Even the friendships that drained you still gave you something to do, someone to respond to, somewhere to be. But now, without them, you are left with something many people fear: solitude. Eleanor, now 70, spent most of her life surrounded by people. She was always busy, always on the go, always saying yes. For years, she believed that a full life meant never being alone. When friends grew distant and the phones stopped ringing as often, she found herself facing something she had long avoided: the quiet. At first, it unsettled her. The silence of an empty home felt too loud, too heavy. She left the television on just for noise, filled her schedule with errands just to stay occupied. But one day something shifted. She took a walk, not to meet anyone, not to pass the time, but simply to be. For the first time in a long time, she noticed things she had once overlooked: the way the morning air carried the scent of pine, the way the sunlight painted the world in soft gold. She sat with her coffee, not to fill space, but to savor the warmth between her hands. And as she leaned into the stillness, she realized something profound. She wasn't lonely. She was free, because solitude and loneliness are not the same. Loneliness is an emptiness, a longing for something missing. Solitude is a presence, a fullness within yourself. It is the ability to sit in silence and feel whole, to hear your own thoughts without needing someone else's voice to validate them. Some of the happiest, most content people in the world are not those who surround themselves with the most friends, but those who have learned to love their own company. There is a quiet power in being alone, not as something to endure, but as something to embrace. It is in solitude that you begin to hear yourself clearly, where creativity flourishes, where you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. And when you stop resisting it, when you let yourself sink into the stillness instead of filling it with noise, something beautiful happens. A walk becomes more than just movement. It becomes a moment of deep connection with the world around you. A journal becomes more than words on a page. It becomes a conversation with the deepest parts of yourself. A quiet morning with a cup of coffee becomes more than just a routine. It becomes a ritual, a sacred act of presence. This is not loneliness. This is liberation. And once you embrace it, you may just realize that the best company you will ever have has been with you all along. Something remarkable happens when you learn to embrace solitude. The silence that once felt unfamiliar becomes a place of clarity. You begin to understand yourself in a way that was impossible when life was filled with noise. And in that clarity, you start to see relationships differently, not as something to fill the empty spaces, but as something to truly treasure. For years, Thomas, now 78, prided himself on having a wide circle of friends. His phone was always ringing, his days filled with casual check-ins, polite conversations, and the occasional gathering where the talk never went beyond the surface. It felt like connection until it didn't. One day, he realized that despite being surrounded by people, he still felt a quiet sense of emptiness. These friendships, though familiar, lacked something: depth, meaning, a true sense of belonging. He thought about the people he spoke to the most, the acquaintances, the old colleagues, the distant relatives he only saw out of habit. And then he thought about the ones who had always been there, waiting even when he was too busy keeping up with everyone else. His daughter, who once felt like they were drifting apart. His grandchildren, who were growing up too fast, their lives unfolding in moments he had been too distracted to fully embrace. And then the question came, what if I stopped chasing and started choosing? So he did. Not out of resentment, not out of regret, but out of a quiet understanding that not all relationships are meant to last forever, and that's okay. Instead of making time for everyone, he made time for the people who mattered most. The result? Something deeper than he had ever expected. His conversations with his daughter became richer, no longer just about logistics or updates, but about life, about memories, about the things that truly mattered. His grandchildren no longer saw visits as routine, but as something to look forward to, afternoons filled with laughter, old stories, and quiet moments of connection. And with that shift came something he hadn't felt in years, a sense of fulfillment. Because when you stop chasing shallow connections, you create space for the people who truly make life meaningful. You begin to invest in moments that linger, conversations that leave you thinking long after they end, shared experiences that add depth to your days, relationships that are not just familiar, but deeply felt. It doesn't take much to strengthen the bonds that matter. It starts with choosing presence over obligation. With reaching out not out of habit, but out of love. A handwritten note to a grandchild, a heartfelt conversation with a sibling, a walk with an old friend who has stood the test of time. These are the moments that build a life rich with connection. Because in the end, happiness is not found in the number of people you know. It is found in the depth of the relationships you choose to nurture. And when you shift your focus to what truly matters, you may just find that your world becomes smaller, yet infinitely more meaningful. After years of prioritizing others, family, work, friendships, you've finally begun to focus on what truly matters. The relationships that bring you peace. The connections that feel effortless and real. But once you've strengthened those bonds, another realization emerges. What about the relationship you have with yourself? For so long, life has been about showing up for others. About being the dependable one, the responsible one. And now, for the first time in decades, there is space to ask, what do I want? Barbara, now 73, had spent most of her life as an accountant. She was good at it, but numbers were never what set her soul on fire. As a child, she loved painting, losing herself in colors, creating something out of nothing. But life, as it so often does, led her down a different path. A career, marriage, raising children. The dream of painting again was always pushed to someday. And then one day she realized someday had arrived. At first, she hesitated. It felt strange to pick up a paintbrush after 50 years, as if she no longer had the right to call herself an artist. But one quiet afternoon, with nothing but time and an old canvas, she dipped her brush into paint. The strokes were shaky at first, uncertain, until something familiar stirred inside her. A feeling she hadn't touched in decades. Pure, unfiltered joy. She painted every day after that. Not for money, not for recognition, but because it made her feel alive. And one day, on a whim, she shared her work online. Someone bought it, and in that moment, she realized she hadn't just filled her time. She had rediscovered a part of herself that had been waiting all along. Because this stage of life is not about slowing down. It's about becoming more of who you were always meant to be. It's about dusting off old dreams, giving yourself permission to explore, and remembering that passion has no expiration date. If you've ever thought, I wish I had learned to play the piano. I always wanted to write a book. I used to love gardening. I wonder if I could still dance. This is your moment. There are no deadlines, no rules, no reason not to start. This is not the end of your story. This is the chapter where you finally get to do the things you never had time for. And that is something worth getting excited about. Once you rediscover what makes you feel alive, something else becomes clear. Your body and mind must be strong enough to sustain it. What good is passion if you don't have the energy to pursue it? What joy is there in purpose if your health is always holding you back? Because the truth is, fulfillment isn't just about what you do, it's about how you feel while doing it. For years, David, now 76, convinced himself that staying busy meant staying engaged. He kept up with social obligations, always saying yes even when he was exhausted. He told himself that slowing down meant giving up, that pushing through fatigue was just part of aging. But then the exhaustion became more than just an occasional feeling, it became his normal. The sleep he once took for granted became restless. The energy he once had felt like it was slipping away. His body ached, his mind felt foggy, and the things that used to bring him joy felt like obligations. And then, one morning, after yet another sleepless night, he had a realization: he had been taking care of everyone except himself. So he made a change. Not a drastic one, not all at once, but little by little, he started choosing himself. He replaced crowded brunches with morning walks, swapping small talk for fresh air. He made space for stillness, for quiet moments of reflection instead of overstimulation. He listened to his body, fueling it with real nourishment instead of quick fixes. And within weeks, something incredible happened. He felt lighter, stronger, more alive than he had in years. His mind cleared, his energy returned. And suddenly, all the things he had rediscovered, the passions, the purpose, the excitement for life, felt possible again. Because this is what happens when you make yourself a priority. Your body rewards you. Your mind thanks you. Your life expands. Independence isn't just about how you spend your time, it's about how you take care of yourself, about finally making your well-being the foundation of everything else. And the beauty of it is that it doesn't take much. A walk instead of another hour in front of the TV. A few moments of quiet instead of rushing to the next thing. A simple meal that fuels you instead of something that leaves you sluggish. Small choices made consistently lead to a stronger, healthier, more vibrant you. Because self-care is not selfish. It is the key to everything. And when you take care of yourself first, you have more to give to your passions, to the people you love, and most importantly, to the life you deserve. Something changes when you start taking care of yourself, not just physically, but mentally. When your body feels strong, your mind feels clear. When you stop carrying the weight of obligations that no longer serve you, something remarkable happens. You begin to see your life with fresh eyes. For Hank, that clarity came at 80. He had spent decades following the path that made sense, building a career, raising a family, maintaining a home that once overflowed with life. But in recent years, something felt off. The house, once a place of warmth, now echoed with emptiness. The routines, once comforting, now felt like chains. And the thought that haunted him most wasn't what he had done, it was what he hadn't done. One evening, as he sat alone in the home he had lived in for nearly 40 years, he let himself ask the question he had been avoiding: is this really how I want to live the rest of my life? The answer came quicker than he expected. No. So he did something that shocked everyone. He sold the house, packed his things, and moved to a quiet town by the coast. His friends asked him why. His family worried it was too late for such a change. But Hank knew something they didn't. It's never too late to start fresh. At first, there was hesitation. A lifetime of structure doesn't disappear overnight. But then something incredible happened. He woke up feeling free. No more obligations, no more pressure to keep up with what no longer fulfilled him. Mornings were no longer rushed. Evenings were his own. He took up fishing, something he hadn't done since he was a young man. He walked through town without a schedule, striking up conversations when he wanted to, enjoying his solitude when he didn't. And one day, as he sat by the water, watching the tide move in and out, he realized he hadn't felt this alive in decades. Because that's the ultimate reward of independence. No need for approval, no fear of judgment, no regrets. You have spent your life fulfilling obligations, showing up for others, doing what was necessary. But now? Now is your time to live exactly how you want. Whether that means moving somewhere new, starting a hobby just for the joy of it, changing your routine, or simply choosing peace over pressure, the beauty of this stage in life is that you no longer have to explain yourself to anyone. And the best part? Regret isn't about what you've done, it's about what you never allowed yourself to do. But here's the truth, there is still time. There is no deadline for change, no expiration date on happiness. Whether it's a big decision like Hank's or small daily choices that bring you joy, the only thing that matters is that it feels right for you. Because at the end of the day, the measure of a life well lived isn't in how many people understood your choices. It's in how fully and unapologetically you embraced them. If there's one lesson to take from all of this, it's that life doesn't shrink with age. It expands in ways you never expected. The world may tell you that growing older means slowing down, stepping back, becoming less. But the truth? This is your time to become more. More at peace, more fulfilled, more free than you've ever been. Because happiness at this stage isn't about holding on to what was, it's about embracing what is. It's about making peace with the past while fully stepping into the present. It's about choosing yourself after years of choosing for everyone else. And when you do, life opens up in the most beautiful ways. So, ask yourself, what do I want my days to look like? What do I want to feel when I wake up in the morning? Because no one else gets to decide that for you. You get to write this chapter. And you deserve to make it one worth living. And if you ever need guidance, inspiration, or just a reminder that you're not alone on this journey, that's exactly why we created Elderly Wisdom Story. Here, we share insights, lessons, and real stories that remind us all that life after 70 isn't an ending. It's a beginning. If this message resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Share your thoughts, your experiences, your own wisdom. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Elderly Wisdom Story so we can continue walking this journey together. Because the best years of your life, they're still ahead of you.